this is what this business is all about.
For decades, Hulk Hogan was the face of professional wrestling, the muscle-bound hero with the golden mustache, the all-American superstar who told fans to say your prayers and eat your vitamins. But behind the roaring crowds, flashing cameras and championship belts, there was another side of Hogan, one few ever saw, and even fewer dared to speak about. A life built not just on fame, but on secrets, contradictions, and choices that blurred the line between the man and the myth. He wasn't just living one life. He was living two. While fans saw the larger-than-life icon in the ring, behind closed doors, Hogan battled with broken friendships, hidden scandals, and the pressure of maintaining an image that was slipping through his fingers. Every smile on camera hid a storm of personal turmoil. Every victory came with a price. The public adored Hulk Hogan, but Terry Bollea, the man behind the persona, was quietly unraveling. Over the years, rumors swirled, betrayals, lawsuits, affairs, and controversies that threatened to destroy everything he had built. Yet somehow Hogan always managed to come out on top, reinventing himself again and again. How did he manage to live this double life so flawlessly? And what was the cost of keeping it hidden for so long? Today, we dive deep into the story behind the legend, the lies, the pressure, the pain, and the shocking truth about how Hulk Hogan lived a double life. And how he got away with it. Beneath the bright yellow bandanas and booming catchphrases, there existed a man whose reality was far from the image that millions adored. To the world, Hulk Hogan was the ultimate American hero, a symbol of strength, loyalty, and family values. But behind closed doors, Terry Bollea, the man beneath the character, lived a life filled with contradictions, secrets, and inner conflict that few ever saw. This double life wasn't born overnight. It was built carefully, layer by layer, as the pressures of fame consumed the man behind the muscles. In the 1980s, Hogan's popularity skyrocketed. He became the face of professional wrestling, the icon of the World Wrestling Federation, and the man who made wrestling a mainstream phenomenon. But with that fame came expectations that no human could truly live up to. Sponsors, fans, and the media all demanded that Hulk Hogan, the superhero, never falter. Every public appearance, every interview, every handshake had to radiate perfection. But Terry Bollea wasn't perfect, and the weight of maintaining that illusion began to crush him. Behind the scenes, Hogan battled with deep insecurities. The larger-than-life persona he had created began to overshadow his true self. Friends and colleagues would later reveal that he often questioned who he really was, the man or the myth. He would walk into arenas filled with tens of thousands of screaming fans and yet feel utterly alone. The fame that brought him power also became a prison. Money, fame, and attention flowed endlessly. But so did temptation. The rock star lifestyle of the wrestling world drew Hogan into late-night parties, questionable friendships, and hidden relationships that clashed with his public image as a devoted husband and father. On television, he preached about honesty, loyalty, and prayer. But off-camera, he was a man caught between his faith and his flaws. His double life was more than just secrecy. It was survival. To keep the Hogan empire alive, he had to play both roles perfectly. This struggle became more intense as scandals started brewing. Wrestling was changing, and with it, the image of its stars. Rumors about Hogan's private behavior began to circulate. His strained marriage, his close ties to powerful promoters, and whispers of personal betrayal. But Hogan had mastered the art of control. He knew how to use the media, how to twist headlines, and how to turn even his worst moments into stories of redemption. His charisma wasn't just for show. It was his armor. By the early 1990s, Hogan was a global superstar, but Terry Bollea was fading in the shadows. The world saw Hulkamania, the unstoppable hero who told fans to say your prayers and eat your vitamins. But inside, he was becoming a stranger to himself. The man who once lived to inspire millions now lived in fear that his truth would destroy everything he built. And yet, the most shocking part was still to come. Because while the public saw a fading star trying to stay relevant behind the scenes, Hogan was making choices that would forever redefine his legacy. Choices that blurred the line between performance and reality, between fame and morality. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the secrets Hogan tried hardest to bury, the affairs, the betrayals, and the moment the world almost found out who he really was. As the cameras rolled and the chants of Hulkamania echoed through packed arenas, the man behind the legend was living a life that few could imagine, one defined by excess, deception, and quiet desperation. Hulk Hogan had become more than just a wrestler. He was a brand, a money-making machine that couldn't afford to malfunction. But maintaining that image came at a devastating price. In public, Hogan played the role of a loving husband and doting father. His reality TV show, Hogan Knows Best, was carefully crafted to showcase a picture-perfect family. Yet even as millions tuned in to watch, his marriage to Linda Hogan was crumbling under the pressure. Arguments that began as whispers soon turned into explosive fights, fueled by jealousy, mistrust, and Hogan's own hidden infidelities. The cameras captured smiles, but off-screen, the tension was unbearable. Friends who knew Terry Bollea personally described a man torn between two worlds, the persona he had built and the life he secretly led. The fame, the adoration, the constant spotlight, it all began to consume him. He couldn't go to a restaurant without being mobbed, couldn't take a walk without someone shouting, "Brother!" or asking for an autograph. In those moments, Hogan realized something chilling. He didn't own his life anymore. The fans did. As his marriage deteriorated, Hogan found comfort in places he shouldn't have. New friendships, secret relationships, and a growing dependency on fame itself. The man who told children to live clean and be strong was living a double life filled with contradictions. Every time the cameras turned off, he became Terry again, insecure, anxious, and desperate for validation. But every time he put the bandana back on, the world expected perfection. Then came the scandals that threatened to destroy everything. In the mid-2000s, rumors about Hogan's extramarital affairs began to swirl, and the media pounced. Tabloids painted him as a hypocrite, a man who preached family values while living recklessly behind the scenes. But Hogan, ever the showman, denied the rumors with convincing charm. He had learned how to manipulate the narrative, to turn controversy into sympathy. Yet nothing could prepare him for what was coming next, a scandal so shocking that it would nearly end his career forever. The infamous leaked video involving Hogan wasn't just a betrayal of his privacy, it was the unmasking of his double life. The footage revealed not just a lapse in judgment, but the darker truth about who Terry Bollea really was when no one was watching. His carefully constructed image shattered overnight. Fans who once idolized him now saw a flawed, broken man caught in a storm of his own making. But even then, Hogan didn't crumble completely. Instead, he used the chaos to his advantage, framing himself as a victim of exploitation and betrayal. Through calculated interviews, emotional apologies, and public appearances filled with regret, he slowly began to rebuild the narrative, transforming from villain to victim in the eyes of many. It was a dangerous dance, one that only someone with Hogan's charisma and media savvy could pull off. He knew how to manipulate the public's emotions, to lean on nostalgia and sympathy. For every scandal, he offered a redemption story. For every mistake, a lesson learned. Yet deep inside, he knew the truth. The mask was slipping, and it wouldn't be long before the world realized that Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea were never the same person. When the scandal exploded and the world turned against him, most assumed Hulk Hogan's career was finished. The leaked video, the lawsuits, and the headlines painted him as a fallen hero, a man who had finally been unmasked. But if there was one thing Hogan knew better than anyone, it was how to stage a comeback. From the wrestling ring to the media battlefield, he had built his entire career on resilience and reinvention. And this time, his biggest opponent wasn't another wrestler. It was his own reputation. After years of living a double life, Hogan stood at a crossroads. The character of Hulk Hogan, the family-friendly red and yellow superhero, could not survive the darkness that had been revealed. So he did what he always did best. He adjusted the narrative. Publicly, he leaned into humility, speaking openly about his mistakes, his depression, and the heavy price of fame. He admitted that being Hulk Hogan had consumed him, that the lines between his real self, Terry Bollea, and his persona had blurred beyond recognition. It was an emotional confession that resonated with many, even as skeptics called it another performance. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Hogan's legal battles grew fierce. His lawsuit against Gawker Media, the outlet that published the private tape, became one of the most high-profile cases in media history. What the world didn't know, however, was how carefully Hogan and his team crafted their strategy. They didn't just argue invasion of privacy. They made it about humanity, dignity, and the violation of trust. Hogan presented himself not as a celebrity seeking revenge, but as a man seeking justice. The jury sided with him, awarding him millions in damages, and, more importantly, the redemption he so desperately needed. But that victory didn't erase the past. For years, Hogan had lived two lives, one of fame and one of regret. And even as he began to rebuild, those two realities continued to clash.
He made appearances at conventions, signed autographs for fans who still called him their childhood hero, and gave emotional interviews about forgiveness and faith.
Yet, insiders revealed that Terry Bollea still struggled with loneliness, guilt, and the haunting feeling that he had lost control of his own story long ago. Hogan's comeback wasn't just a career revival. It was a masterclass in media manipulation. He leaned into nostalgia, reminding fans of the golden days of wrestling, when life felt simpler and heroes were larger than life. He knew that time heals more than truth, and that the public loves a redemption story more than a scandal. Slowly, the headlines shifted. The man once labeled a hypocrite began to be seen as a survivor. Still, his double life never truly disappeared. The man who once preached about loyalty had lost friendships that would never return. His marriage was gone, his public image permanently scarred, and yet the Hulk Hogan brand remained profitable. Even in disgrace, he found a way to stay relevant, through documentaries, nostalgia tours, and tell-all interviews that blurred the line between confession and showmanship. Every time Hogan stepped into the spotlight, he performed, not in the ring but in life itself. The truth was that Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea had become inseparable, like two sides of a coin that could never exist without the other. The double life that once destroyed him had also become his greatest weapon. He had learned to control it, to use it, and ultimately, to live with it. By the time the dust settled, Hogan had proven something remarkable. You can't destroy a myth that people refuse to let die. For every scandal, there were still millions of fans who remembered the hero of their childhood, the man who told them to believe in themselves. But as he smiled for cameras and shook hands with fans, the question lingered. Was this redemption, or just another reinvention? Today, Hulk Hogan stands as a man both celebrated and haunted by his own legacy. At first glance, he appears at peace, smiling for fan photos, giving motivational interviews and reflecting on his incredible journey from a small-time Florida musician to one of the most recognized faces in entertainment history. But beneath that calm exterior lies the truth of a man who has lived through fame's highest peaks and its darkest valleys, and who continues to carry the burden of the double life he once led. In his later years, Hogan has often spoken about regret. He admits that the fame he chased for decades took more than it ever gave. In quiet interviews, he reflects on the cost of becoming Hulk Hogan, the broken family, the lost friendships, and the countless nights spent wondering who he really was when the cameras stopped rolling. His larger-than-life persona had made him immortal in pop culture, but it also made him a prisoner of his own image. Terry Bollea, the man, was always hidden behind the mask of Hulk Hogan, and even now, it's a mask he can't fully remove. Yet despite everything, Hogan has managed to find a strange kind of peace. His faith, something he had once set aside during his wildest years, has become a cornerstone of his later life. He often credits spirituality for pulling him back from the brink of despair. After the scandals, lawsuits, and betrayals, Hogan turned inward, finding solace not in fame, but in forgiveness, both from others and from himself. He claims to have learned that redemption doesn't mean erasing the past. It means accepting it. Still, the contradictions remain. Hogan lives in a world that continues to celebrate his legend while quietly questioning his sincerity. Some see him as a survivor who overcame a media witch hunt. Others view him as a man who skillfully manipulated public sympathy. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. Hogan's greatest strength has always been his ability to adapt, to turn even his most painful moments into powerful stories of endurance. And that's exactly what he continues to do. In recent years, he has made appearances at wrestling events, fan conventions, and charity causes, often speaking about resilience and the lessons learned from his past mistakes. To younger fans, he's a nostalgic symbol of wrestling's golden era. To older ones, he's a reminder of a time when heroes seemed invincible. But to Hogan himself, he's both the legend and the man behind it, forever intertwined, forever performing. The irony of his life is that his greatest act was never in the wrestling ring. It was how he managed to live two completely different lives without letting either one destroy him. For decades, Hulk Hogan was an illusion, a mask of strength, honor, and virtue. Terry Bollea was the flawed human core underneath. Together, they created one of the most fascinating figures in American pop culture. A man who could fall from grace and still rise again, time after time. Now, as he looks back on the chaos and the glory, Hogan seems to understand what it all meant. He no longer tries to separate the man from the myth. Instead, he embraces both, the mistakes, the fame, the scandals, and the triumphs, as part of one extraordinary, complicated life. He knows the world will never see him just as Terry Bollea. To millions, he will always be Hulk Hogan, the hero who taught them to believe in themselves, even as he struggled to believe in his own reflection. And maybe that's the truest form of redemption, not in pretending to be perfect, but in surviving the imperfections that make us human. Because in the end, the legend of Hulk Hogan isn't about wrestling rings or catchphrases. It's about the man who lived a double life, faced his own downfall, and somehow, against all odds, got away with it.